What if you knew next week's lotto numbers? Would you still play the ones you've always played, or would you use the ones guaranteed to win? Based on that bit of knowledge, you can make a simple if-then decision and change the course of running your life. If someone has decided that they need more money and they don't win the lottery, then I guess their option is to work overtime. The pseudocode example of this situation would look like this. If I win the lottery, then I'll quit my job, or else I'll work more overtime. The course of running your life in code terms is called the execution of the code. The most common way to compare values and change the execution flow of your code is with the usage of the if statement. Here is the C# pseudocode for an if-else statement. If is followed by a conditional statement enclosed in parentheses. Notice the two equal signs in a row for the equal statement. This is because there are two concepts of equal. The first is used to set or assign a value to a variable, and the second is to compare two variables and evaluate whether or not the same. For example, if your child does something bad, you need to ground him or her. That would be your assigning the status of grounded to his or her freedom. Or in the terms of C-type languages, you would say freedom equals grounded. A single equal sign means that you are assigning a value on the right-hand side of the equal sign to the variable on the left-hand side of the equal sign. So instead, when comparing values, we use the equal symbol, which should always read is equal to. If is then followed by a conditional statement enclosed by parentheses. Below that are a set of lines enclosed by curly braces, which will only run if the condition of the if is true. If the condition is not true, then we run the else code block during the code execution. Okay, let's start by opening Visual Studio Express and going File, New Project. Make sure it's a console C# application, and we will name this CH3A, and it's in the C:\Joes2Pros folder. Okay, let's type the following code in our main to create a guess the number type game. Let's start with an integer, which we specify as int, and we will say it's secret num as the variable name, and we will also set it to 5. We'll also have a variable called guessNum, which is also an int, but we're not going to set that yet. Next, we'll do a console write, and in the parentheses, we will say guess a number between 0 and 10. After finishing that line of code, drop down a line, and next, we will put in our input line to find out what the user is guessing. So we will say the guessNum is equal to int32.parse, and in the set of parentheses, we're going to parse whatever they typed in, which is a console.readline. Now for the if statement. If the secret num is double equal to the guess num, well then it's true. What are we going to do? So we have a set of code for that. Now in our else, we have a block there too. Now we'll put a console readline at the end just to pause it so we have some extra time. So this code has a secret number that asks the user to guess a number. If the user guesses the secret number correctly, then we should let them know. And if they're wrong, then tell them something different. Okay, let's add the code for if the number is guessed correctly, or when the secret num is equal to the guess num. We will say console.writeLine, and in the write line, we will say, great guess. You win. Now, what if they didn't guess it correct? We'll go in the else block and type console writeLine, and in the set of parentheses, in our set of double quotes, we will say, sorry, that's not it. Okay, let's run this code, and let's test a correct answer by typing 5, and it says, we won. Now let's run it again and not guess it correctly. This time, we'll put in a 2, and it says, sorry, that's not it. We simply took the value from the user and put it in for the guessNum variable and compared it to the secretNum variable. If the two matched in value, then the progress displays a congratulatory message by running the if block. But if they do not match, then we run the else block. And the else block says, console write line, sorry, that's not it. So far, we have only used double equals in our condition. But we can update our guessing program, so if you get the answer wrong, the computer will give you a clue if you're too high or too low. This will require multiple if-else statements. Let's start off by going inside of the else and knowing that there's two possibilities, being too high and too low. So we'll say if the guessNum is greater than the secretNum, then we're going to tell them with a console write line that, sorry, that's too high. Now, if it's not, then obviously they guessed too low. So we'll say else, and then we will say console.writeLine, sorry, too low. Let's test this. Let's run it, and we will type a 1, which is lower than 5. And look, it says sorry, too low. Let's run this again, and let's put in a 9, which is sorry, too high. And just to make sure everything's running fine, let's put in a 5, which is the correct number, and it says, great guess, you win. This code works perfectly. This kind of coding can get a little messy with an if statement inside of your else block. There's a clear solution, and that is to put the if command directly after the else command. This is known as the else if statement. The easiest way to demonstrate this is to write our program using this new statement. So let's clean this up just a little bit and go back to the point where all we had is the first if statement. All right, that looks a little cleaner. And now for the else if statement, we're going to type else if and a set of parentheses, and we'll say guessNum is greater than secretNum. Well, if that's the case, then we'll say console.writeLine, and we'll tell them, sorry, too high. And if it's not, well then, obviously it's too low. So we'll have an else where we say console.writeLine, sorry, too low. Notice there's no longer a set of curly braces after the else clause of the initial if statement. Since this is not counted as multiple lines, rather running one statement, we can just do it without the curly braces. If we had multiple statements to run after the else, then we would need a set of curly braces and running multiple statements. But since we only have one statement after the else, we don't need the curly braces. So let's run this. We will enter 1, and it says, sorry, too low. Let's run it another time and put in 9, and it says, sorry, too high. So this seems to be working just fine without the curly brackets. And we don't have to nest an if statement inside of an else statement. That does it for Chapter 3.1 on decisions with if and else. What do we got next? Chapter 3.2, decisions with switch.